Hey, it's Aaron, and today I'm out in an old hunting shack way up north, and we're heating the whole place with this old wood-burning stove here, which is pretty cool. So later on today we're going to head out into the middle of the wilderness, and we're going to build some cool stuff, so come along with me.
So as soon as the sun came up, we strapped on our snowshoes and made our way into the woods. We wanted to find out how the lean-to that we built during the summer had held up. It was a fun project that took a lot of work, so surely it would be standing in all of its glorious beauty, waiting for us to return.
Well, this serves as a lesson. This was the lean-to that I made last year. Big pile now. It's still no snow underneath of it, but we made it on a fallen log. Bad move. Now I'm going to take these snowshoes off here. Okay, so since this bad boy is basically fallen right down, you can see it's still fairly good on the top. We can walk on top of it, but instead I'm going to do this and kind of make a bit of a teepee sort of thing.
So off camera, we scoured the woods to find the perfect branches that we could use to make this teepee, or wickiup as it's called. Some were deadfall because we wanted to use as much scrap as we possibly could, but we also had a few fresh logs to make sure that the structure was sturdy and strong.
Okay, so basically we get all these logs here, and you try to get some Y branches and so forth, and basically link them all together as best as you can. And yeah, try to put some of them against some trees, that sort of thing. And soon we're gonna have to make a fire so we can boil up some water and have some tea. Well, looks like we got her so far. Got her teepee up, at least the bare bones. Pretty soon we're gonna be putting on a little bit of shade, and started a fire here with a bit of a branch so we can hang some pots to boil some water so we can make some tea. Obviously gloves are getting frozen, so we're gonna do that and take a little bit of a break like I wanted to do.
The weather was good first thing in the morning, so it seems like we were lucking out so far, but it is important to conserve your energy.
So I'm just going to take my little cup here and get myself some nice white snow. It'll reduce quite a bit, so I might have to pack this in a little bit here. Oh, pack it all in. Get some more snow. And you want to just keep doing that because, like I say, it'll reduce quite a bit. And you're going to want to get at least a little bit of water if you're wanting a drink, you know. So we're just about full. Yeah, usually you probably want to wear gloves. I don't need gloves. Gloves? You don't need no stinking gloves. All right, so we're pretty much packed full here. I'm going to take her over to our fire. Ooh, yeah. Okay. You just, oh boy. Oh, that's not going to be very nice. Not in your drink. There we go. Get some of this shit out of here. Beautiful. A little bit of nature in your drink won't hurt you. A little bit too much though. Might.
When the snow is packed tight, some parts will melt faster than others, so be sure to mix it around or else you'll burn your container.
So you can really tell with all the snow that I packed in there, it's reduced down to about less than half. So you're probably going to want to fill that up again. So we got it mostly melted now. Take a sip. Oh, that's good. Tastes like smoke. Nice to have a little bit of nature in the things that you drink.
As we were out getting supplies, it did start to snow a little bit, which really wasn't that big of a deal because, well, it was beautiful. This country is very far north, so we wanted to make sure that we had all of our bases covered when we came out here. We had all of our supplies loaded up into a sled, and we wanted to make sure that we also had some protection. A big dog, which was really helpful because this is bear country, and the last time I was out here, we ended up chasing a few off the road.
Okay, so off camera, I did a little bit of stuff. So down here, you can see we made a bit of a doorway for the wickiup. Basically, all this is a couple of sticks laid crossways across the top horizontally. And then we obviously have some uprights here, some Y branches. And they're linked together with a bunch of different Y branches and so forth, all tied in, so it's a very sturdy little shelter. Then on the inside, what we've done here is we've actually got these nice thick cut logs up at the top. Hopefully the camera is bright enough to see, but we've actually cut some wedges basically, so it can hold some sticks sturdy in place and basically get a good strong hold on whatever we're doing. And then, well, I might as well show you the abode. Then inside we have our nice little fire pit. We got a little bit of a rack system going on here so we can roast food or dry our clothes, whatever we need to do. And then obviously from there, see, that's the nice little entranceway that we have for this, and stacked a whole bunch of wood up at the top, trying to fill in the gap basically where the doorway once was. And then over here we have a whole bunch of willow. Now we're going to be taking that willow and we're going to be weaving it in and out through all of the different little bits of wood all across here, so we can actually fill in the rest of these gaps and make this little house a home. So basically we want to take willow like this, and we're going to weave it into the logs like so. And then we're going to want to take it and bend it and weave it actually through the structure itself. And then we're going to take it back again and weave it back through this way as well. Now some pieces are going to break off, some pieces aren't going to fit perfectly, but that's the thing about working in nature, is that everything is very natural. It's going to all work the way it wants to work. Nothing is going to be perfect, but that's kind of the beauty of the whole thing. So I'm going to start taking all of this willow over here. I'm going to start weaving it around through with my partner helping me from the inside. I'm going to pass it into them. They're going to pass it out to me, and so forth and so on, until we get roughly 6 to 7 feet up, leaving a good open space at the top for any of the excess smoke or products of combustion from the fire that we're having inside the pit to be released out into the wilderness and not choke us to death while we're trying to sleep. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do here, now I have 2 teams, so I'm going to be working on the outside, weaving in all of the willow, but I'm going to have my partner actually working on building a fire. It's a good thing to make sure that you split up your jobs evenly, so you don't overwork yourself and so you have everything done in a reasonable amount of time. But because the people that I'm hanging out with are hard-ass mountain man motherfuckers, they don't want to be on camera, so I'm going to show you how to do a bit of a fire. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a little bit of kindling. I have some over here, but I'm going to do a little bit more over here. So I'm just going to very gingerly knock off a little bit of bark, a little bit of wood and so forth into the utility shovel that I have right here. I'm doing this just so I have a lot of little tiny stuff that is extremely flammable, but it also keeps a lot of oxygen in the fire pit as well, because you want to make sure that you keep that fire triangle. Obviously you want heat, you want fuel, and you want oxygen. And that's very important for making a quick fire out in the middle of the bush. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to dump all of my shavings out into my little pile here. Now, it's important to note that whenever you're building a fire outside, or in general, you want to make sure that you have a base of wood, because that is going to allow your embers to stay hot, and it's going to keep the bottom of the fire always burning. Okay, so basically what I've done here is I've created a small tray that lifts the kindling up off of the fire itself. Now I'm going to take all of my kindling and I'm going to place it on top of this with the lightest stuff at the bottom, the heaviest stuff up at the top. That way it allows me to get an angle where I can actually feed my fire underneath that little pile there. So hopefully it'll start up relatively quickly. Now, once it does start up, we're going to need to have a bunch of bigger stuff on hand, which we do have right over here, to be able to catch it as fast as we can. Now, once we've done that, I'm going to build a little bit of a shed, or a, what do you call it, a cabin of sorts. Let's break that off. Build a little bit of a cabin just over top of this. So then we have a little bit more material to work with. And you'll notice this weird little thing that I have in my hand. This is actually something called a feather stick. And you basically make this by taking your knife, by taking your knife, which is all covered in snow, and running it along the edge until you make enough of these little feathers to actually get us started. Now, this thing should start up pretty quickly, what we're gonna see right now, and it should catch everything pretty fast. So, I'm gonna go over to where my hole is. I'm gonna light this bad boy up. And yes, I realize I'm using a lighter, don't at me. This is a fort building tutorial, not a fire starting tutorial. So you can see it actually starts up pretty quickly. You want it to get a good little smolder going on here. Then we're going to take this whole thing, we're going to place it right underneath our fire. And with any luck, we should see it start to work. Now you don't want to blow too hard, obviously, or you'll blow your fire out. You want just enough so it brings the flame. So obviously we got the fire going, and it's nice and roaring with a bed of coals underneath there, really nice. And we're gonna have a bit of a lunch, because after this we're gonna go and try to find some pine trees. And this forest, you know, obviously we got a bunch more shade up as well, and this forest, not really that many pine trees, so we're gonna have to hike for a little while, or else we're not gonna get any real good shade. Shade is basically the covering that you have over top of something like this little wickiup that we have built here. So we're going to do that here in a few minutes and see how we do. So we have triumphantly trekked through the barren tundra to find ourselves a beautiful Christmas tree. And now I'm going to work on stripping down all of the branches that are coming off so we can use them as shade or possibly bedding. We'll decide on what we're going to do with that in a second. So what I'm basically going to do is take my machete here, and I'm just going to start knocking off all of these branches so I can begin to actually use this for something useful. So we've determined that since there isn't quite enough bedding here, or shade, whatever you want to call it, to actually cover the wickiup or teepee, we determined that we're going to make it into a bed. So off camera, what we've done is cut 2 large size logs and a few strut logs as well. Now basically what we're going to do is put one at the head, one at the toe, and run these longer logs across to make it into a bed. And to make it a little bit more comfortable, we're going to take these knotted logs with little branches and so forth, and we're going to knock off all the little extra edges just to make it a little bit more comfortable. So we got this knife here. It's kind of like a kukri sort of thing, and it has this divot right in here. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to actually work it along the edge to knock off a lot of that excess stuff so it's a little bit more comfortable to lay on. Cool, so since we decided that we're going to actually use a lot of the shade that we got from that pine tree for bedding instead of actually sheathing the outside of the structure, we're going to use this tarp instead. So we've kind of draped it along the outside edge of the wickiup so far, and we're going to basically hook some sticks into the eyelets, basically right over here. We're going to hook sticks into these eyelets here, and we're going to try to hoist the entire thing up to the top of the structure as high as we can go, while also leaving a good opening at the top so we can allow a lot of the products of combustion from the fire inside to leave. Now this is going to save us a lot of time. Since it is winter, the only thing that we have to cover a lot of this structure is sticks and twigs and snow, which we will do, but it's a lot better to cover as much of the structure as we possibly can with this tarp for now, just to save us a little bit of time. So obviously it's kind of sitting here on the ground. You can just barely see my fire right there. And we're gonna hoist it up and hopefully it works out. Okay, so that actually worked way faster than I expected it to. Pretty much immediately we got it wrapped around, and as you can see, we took some sticks, popped them through the eyelets, and then raised it up as high as we could get it with the sticks, and then wedged each one of those sticks into the actual structure itself. So it's kind of like it's wearing a cape, which is kind of neat. Here, I'll take a step back here so you can really see what's going on. So we got a little bit of our shade down at the bottom here. And then we got our little cape up at the top, and that's gonna keep in a lot of heat. That is basically taking care of 90% of what we actually had to fill. So now we only have to fill a little bit more, and we should be ready to go. So just when we thought we were out of building supplies to do the outside of this thing, we actually decided to cannibalize our you know, lean-to from last year, and grabbed a lot of grass that we were able to get during the summertime. So that's fantastic. So we got a lot of the outside covered in grass now. There's still obviously a bunch of holes left to do, but it's starting to work really quite nicely. So having that tarp at the back that covers a lot of this wickiup, it actually saves a whole lot of time for us to actually fill in the rest of those gaps. So we're gonna keep filling them in, and hopefully it'll be a warm night. So night fell on us pretty quickly. Weren't expecting it to get this dark this fast, but not a big deal. I got my flashlight out, and right now I'm just gonna work on sawing a couple of logs. Might not even be able to see it right here. Sawing this log here so I can get at least a little bit of firewood, and yeah, hopefully keep warm for the night. We're putting up a couple of tinfoil safety blankets as some makeshift wall coverings, because we got 99% of the walls covered, but there's small cracks and crevices that we didn't want to leave open. So packed those in tightly with some security blankets. Got one hanging over the front, has a door, which I'll show you all in a moment. But right now I'm gonna cut myself some logs, so.
We already had a lot of firewood, but we wanted to make sure that we had some larger sized logs to keep the heat in overnight.
So now I'm in the shelter. I have this fire blanket done up behind me here, just right behind our bed. So at least the fire will be reflected from that security blanket onto us while we sleep. That's the general idea. I'll give you a bit of a tour of the entire place. So now you can see there where my tripod is sitting. And in front of me, we got our nice little fire pit done up here. And we're melting ourselves some snow for some water. It's been a hard, long day. Obviously, over our front door, we have the other fire blanket and all of our dirty, wet clothes hanging from the ceiling all along. There's my jacket and hoodie, and all of the smoke is rising up through the top of the shelter, as you can clearly see. So I would say that this was a very successful shelter building experience. I got to have a very nice little fire. I got to build some things with my friends, and that's really fun. And yeah, hopefully in the morning you'll see me bright-eyed and bushy-tailed because I had such a wonderful sleep. Oh my goodness, I don't even think I showed you all this. Hang on. On this, my bed. Fantastic. Look, yeah, my assistant here is helping me out. We lay down all of our logs in front and across, and put a bunch of pine needles and so forth underneath for bedding. And now we got this blanket on top, that blanket there, that blanket there. We're gonna be warm as hell. It's probably minus 20 degrees outside, but it's nice and cozy in here. So see you tomorrow. So it is now morning. As you can see, lots of light shining through in different spots. I'm actually surprised at how warm this place ended up being, considering how much airflow was able to go through a lot of the sticks and so forth. All in all, not bad, not a bad time. There are a few things that I would definitely change. One of which 100% being having heavier blankets. A lot of the time we were using extra jackets and all sorts of other things as covering, just to kind of stem the cold a little bit. So definitely heavier jackets are required, or heavier blankets are required, sorry. And a few other things, obviously. Now, if I had the ability to build this shack in the summertime, I think that a lot of this would have been a little bit better, just simply for the fact that we would have had more materials to actually work with, to actually shield in the structure a little bit better so it could keep in the heat a lot better. What I did like was that we raised the tarp up as you can see in the background here, we raised it up off the ground a little bit and allowed for a lot of airflow to come in through the bottom. Now this helped out our fire quite a bit, because even though we had the door covered, like I was saying yesterday, with this safety blanket, there was still a lot of oxygen that was able to come in underneath the tarp and underneath everything else to feed the fire and to shoot the smoke up through the top. Obviously, there were some problems with that. Whenever you're having a fire inside of a structure, you have to worry about smoke. So the place where we had the bed didn't work out so well, so we had to move the bed around just slightly so we could actually get, an area that wasn't filled with smoke. But outside of that, it actually worked out really well. You see my socks hanging in the background there. They got way too wet. We hung up all our clothes. Everything seemed to dry pretty well. And now it's just a matter of cleaning up the camp. So I had a great time. I hope you all enjoyed watching this. I'm going to go outside and show you an outside view of exactly what it looks like now that all of the hoarding is on. And yeah, look forward to that.
It was well below freezing by the time we actually made it to bed, but we were able to keep warm next to a roaring fire and plenty of wood, along with a little bit of body heat. And as you can see, on the outside of the structure when we awoke, it was covered in frost. Remember, this isn't something that just anybody should go out and do. It isn't any kind of glamping experience. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but we were able to do it because we were ready, willing, and most importantly, prepared for anything that could happen while we were there. Inside the shelter was warm, but unfortunately laying on a bed of nothing but sticks and twigs wasn't necessarily comfortable. We could have easily done with at least one more tree of the same size just for bedding alone, and some sort of feathered down blanket would certainly be preferable to what we ended up using. But outside of dealing with just a little bit of wet wood from the snow and only a few hours of sleep, all in all, things went pretty well.
One last thing. Remember that awesome lean-to I built last year? Well, we had to cannibalize it last night. I think I talked a little bit about that. And this is the remnants of that poor thing. But you know what? It served its purpose. English, Aaron. It served its purpose. It saved us last night from the bitter cold. And it also worked out to be a really, really cool experiment from earlier on this year. So I'm really happy about the way that everything turned out. I'm so ecstatic and exhausted, and I can't wait to get back home and have a nice warm cup of coffee and sleep in a real bed. Even though, sticks and logs are, you can make them comfortable. It doesn't really equate to the old futon mattress, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, thanks for watching.